For some reason, I was getting all COVID unit shifts in the ER. And because at that time I was part time, I didn't have the disability benefits or the sick leave or anything associated. So if I were to get sick, then I would not only be not getting benefits because I was working part time, but also I would not be able to work at the clinic.
3, 2, 1, liftoff.
Welcome to the Ketamine Startup podcast. This is where we talk about opening up a ketamine infusion clinic, marketing it, and more. This episode comes straight from one of our live mastermind sessions with our students in our signature course, Ketamine Startup 101, where we shared our answer to the commonly asked question that we get: when is it the right time to go full-time with your ketamine clinic? We share some common myths, a powerful framework, and some stories along the way to dive deep into this answer. We had a great time answering this question, so let's dive in.
When is the right time to go full time with your ketamine clinic?
And we just want to begin this section here with a short disclaimer. What we're going to be sharing in this topic today is for informational purposes only and is based on our personal experience and observations and those in ourselves transitioning from working in a hospital, in a clinic where you're perhaps an employee, to a full-time ketamine therapy clinic. We're not financial advisors, and this should not be considered professional, financial, legal, or business advice. Before making any major career or financial decisions, we strongly recommend consulting with a licensed financial advisor, accountant, or attorney to determine what is best for you in your unique situation.
So let's talk about the situation that you may be in. Some of you are adding ketamine therapy to your existing practice and wondering if it should become your primary focus. Others are starting brand new, fresh, and hoping that ketamine therapy alone will become financially stable. But no one here may have taken the full leap quite yet, and that's exactly why today's conversation matters for you.
And this is a question that we often get asked because back in when did we make our leap?
So we started the clinic in 2018, and the time that I transitioned out was about 3 years later. So that was December 2020 was my last ER shift.
And the real question is, to just really boil it down to the topic here, is it isn't just when can I quit my job, but rather when can you quit safely while setting yourself up for a long-term successful career in the ketamine therapy space. So we wanted to talk about 4 common myths about when to go full time. Number 1 is, if my ketamine clinic covers its costs, I'm ready to quit. Well, the reality is covering costs is great, but profitability and stability matter more. We're all about running a lean process, and we're going to talk about that a little bit later in this topic. But there's more to it.
Number 2 is, if I add ketamine therapy to my practice, it's going to naturally take off. Well, simply offering ketamine infusions doesn't mean that there's going to be a long line of patients coming to you immediately.
Number 3 is, once I quit my job, I will have more time and my clinic will grow faster. The reality is time alone, working on this, 24 hours a day or whatever, because you just are focusing on this, is not going to guarantee success. If anything, we've noticed that those that have quit, it kind of actually has their job to just focus on their clinic kind of goes a little bit slower than those that learned how to juggle the two, their job and a clinic, as a side hustle.
And myth number 4 is, if I don't go all in soon, I'm going to miss my chance. Well, the reality is sometimes you do want to be the first mover, but timing is really key. Remember that saying that pioneers get shot, settlers take the land.
So to understand, how or when is the good time to go full time with a ketamine clinic, we have this framework that helps you figure this out. That really helped us. Well, in retrospect, it was boiled down to these 3 F's that really moved the needle, helped us decide were the factors, the signs that got us to do the leap, right? So the 3 F's, they stand for finances, feelings, and force. Finances. The first one is, can your clinic sustain you? Feelings, are you ready to let go? And finally, there's forces. are external factors pushing you? So we're going to dive into each one. There's a lot of interesting learnings that we're going to talk about, share some stories, and go from there.
So let's cover the first F, finances. Can your clinic sustain you? Well, the first question to ask is, can my clinic actually pay those bills? And that's the overhead, the malpractice insurance, the staff, etc. So what you want to do is perform a personal financial analysis to determine the revenue needed to cover both your clinic expenses and personal financial needs. One of the people we love and follow is Jim Dolly from the White Coat Investor. And his principles for physicians are to pay off high interest debt, number one, build an emergency savings fund, and avoid the lifestyle creep. He always talks about that saying, live like a resident. Next, you want to calculate your freedom number. What is the minimum revenue your clinic must generate to support personal expenses, your retirement funding, and financial security? The real key with the ketamine side is to run a lean operation. This means keeping your overhead low and avoid relying on unsustainable patient volumes. So here's the key takeaway in the bottom line. If you were to quit today, would your clinic sustain your lifestyle without the financial stress associated with that?
And I think it's really important on this topic to not only look at it, you have to remember you're looking from the business standpoint, but again, your business is providing your livelihood and therefore should be able to pay or cover the things that you want to do in your personal life, right? That's cover retirement, go on vacations, pay for your kids' school or, somebody to help take care of your parents as they get older or whatever it may be. Having that personal financial analysis and then coupling it with the expenses of your business will help you figure out that number. And then also you'd want a little bit extra to help sustain and grow your practice because you're going to need to put money back into it to help it grow. You're going to have to, feed the plant, continue to water it. And you had mentioned something to me recently about some sort of calculation, like another math way to talk about it.
So let's talk about this, calculating your freedom number. So let's get super technical here. Number one, you want to calculate how much do I need to support my personal expenses, retirement, and other financial security related expenses like I just mentioned. Number two, you want to calculate how much do I need to cover the overhead expenses for the clinic. And then finally, add the number from number one to the number from number two, and that will be your freedom number, more or less. Now, one of the recommendations from someone we follow and is kind of our mentor is Alex Hormozy. He mentions to have 3 to 6 months of personal savings, meaning that you may be able to leave when your clinic's income equals or exceeds your current income and has done so for the past 3 to 6 months. So, this is a ballpark figure and way to think about how much money do we need to bring in to cover business and the personal side of our lives.
I think what's really important here is that you need to do your calculation. You're going to do the math because you're a logical, thoughtful individual. You're, maybe we do like to take a certain amount of risks, but you're going to be you want to make this as a calculated risk. But oddly enough, end of the day, it's not just going to be the money, the numbers that you crunch. It's going to be actually your personal feelings. So that brings us to the second of the three F's, and that is feelings. Are you ready to let go? Meaning, are you mentally stuck in a job you've outgrown? Like, are you ready to go, but it's fear that's holding you back? You got to ask yourself, am I staying because it feels safe or because it's actually serving me? Or are you experiencing burnout and it's starting to creep in? Do you feel like you're being kind of stretched thin within the business that or the clinic you're working at, or the hospital you're working at, and even trying to juggle the ketamine clinic yourself? So you're starting to be like, okay, it's just, I'm reaching that point. I can feel it. This is uncomfortable, which brings me to pain is a really good thing. Pain is what's going to move you and actually going to get you to take action on things that you before would never do. So that stress, that burnout, that frustration, that wasn't happening overnight. It was this kind of slow build. right? And then eventually it gets to the point where you're like, I had enough, I'm done. Maybe it's, an interaction with a patient, maybe it's an interaction with an administrator, and where you're like, oh, wow, nope, they're not going to give me the day off that I requested, even though I'm a full timer and I've been here for 15, 20 years, but they're giving it to the per diem guy. I'm just like, I'm done. I see it now. I rather take that risk of failing at my clinic full time than dealing with this. And so, remember, the fear of leaving is completely normal. But when you're in this indecision limbo stage, it can keep you really stuck. And a key takeaway from this section is the best time to leave isn't when you're feeling 100% ready. It's when that pain of staying in your current job is greater than the fear of leaving and trying something new.
And that reminds me of how I made the decision. So we talked about the financial component, but in reality, it's going to be an emotional decision. We make decisions based on our emotions and then justify it with logic and facts. So I think for me, we had opened the clinic 2018. Things were growing very slowly as expected the first year, 2 years, 3 years. And then there came a point in time where that job that I was at working in the emergency department became painful. And it was a multitude of reasons. There was a COVID-19 pandemic going on. This was back in the days when we didn't know a lot about that. And there was like shortages of immunizations. And there was just a lot of fear associated with that. In addition, on a personal level and a feeling level, well, we had our daughter and she had just been born in like the beginning of the pandemic. So I wanted to be with her more in person because that time with our family is so precious. So accordingly, the decision was not only the financial component, but the emotional feeling component. And so for you, if you're like, how do I know? How do I know? You're going to run the numbers, but then it's going to be based upon your feelings as well.
And what's funny is on the flip side, too, whatever decision you make and then how you're feeling in that state is going to justify whether that was a good or bad decision. Just last night, we were talking about how, we were cuddling with our daughter on the couch. And I'm like, Sam, if we were both still working as employed hospital physicians, we wouldn't be able to be sitting here on this couch cuddling our kid. And, I would be on call or you would be in the hospital doing nights. And we're getting to sit here with our dog, with our daughter, cuddling. And, we have such a wonderful life where some days we don't even know what day it is because we don't have that, Monday morning blues or the Sunday evening blues or whatever. And so because we, finally have gotten to a place, or right now at least, of like nice stability, a good steady growth that we go, oh, that was a good decision. That was a good calculation that we made. So you can either, depending on your feeling, you're either calculating it forward or calculating it back and justifying what you do. But again, we're feeling beings, right? Hey, listeners, this is Kim, and I just want to acknowledge that you're here for a reason. Maybe you're stuck in a cycle of long shifts, feeling a little burnt out, and wondering if there's any other way to practice medicine, especially on your own terms. We've been there, and that's exactly why we created this free checklist, your step-by-step roadmap to starting a ketamine clinic without those costly mistakes. Grab your copy now at www.ketaminestartup.com/checklist. It's completely free because we want you to succeed, not struggle. And hey, if you're driving or mid-workout, don't sweat it. Just check out the show notes for the link when you're ready. And again, that's www.ketaminestartup.com/checklist. Now let's get back to the episode. And so the third and final F in the 3F framework for helping you make this decision is force. Are there external factors pushing you? And so what does that mean? So an example here is your employer is making your current position much less desirable, much less stable. So in some situations, perhaps the group you're working for is downsizing, replacing individuals or other physicians with advanced practice practitioners. Maybe they're shifting their priorities of, okay, we love having you on board, but we're going to not give you as many shifts. Or, oh, well, we're going to get to keep the same amount of shifts, but you're actually going to be not paid as much. Or are you facing more resistance from those that you're working with? You're setting boundaries of like, hey, you know what? I didn't mind staying a couple hours later after my shift to do sign out or to finish up notes. And, now you're just like, oh, wow, like that was actually very detrimental to my health and my personal life. So I'm going to set a boundary. Like I'm out when I'm done. Or you're maybe requesting more time off. Before you were that person that would cover all the shifts, or you're a yes sir, yes ma'am, and now you're like, oh no, I'm good. I'm actually going to use my vacation days, my paid time off. And sometimes you're going to notice some subtle or honestly obvious little nudges of just like, okay, we kind of want you out, and they actually are actively trying to make it difficult for you. And instead of being just super frustrated by this, instead you can be thinking of it. And I love this. The universe is conspiring to help you. I really embraced that. What was the book? It was from the Paulo Coelho book, The Alchemist. The universe is conspiring to help you. These are, instead of these being like demons and frustrations, these are angels. These are helping you actually guide you. And right before the pandemic, we had pregnant. I was pregnant with our daughter, and it was really frustrating because, I requested way in advance, like, okay, I don't want to take call. When you're operating, as an ophthalmologist, if you're not familiar, and I think most of you probably aren't ophthalmologists listening to this, is, you sit, yes, we get to sit when we operate, which is totally awesome, but you can imagine a pregnant belly, it pushes you further away from the head. And so the whole body position, you're asking a surgeon to totally take on a different way of holding themselves in performing a surgery. Now I was a black cloud for ruptured globes. And so I was just like, you know what? For my health, for my ability to best serve my patients and just be able to perform the surgeries the way I want to, I was like, I can't take call right now. And instead of having my department support me in this, I had to, make an appeal to my colleagues, just like, hey, you know what? I made a request. People aren't, nobody stepped up to support this with an admin. Would anybody be willing to, I will repay you once I'm back from maternity leave, or, whatever. And I'm so blessed that I have some amazing colleagues, and they just said, you know what? Don't even need to pay me back. You're good. I'll cover it for you. I've been there. Whether it was a female surgeon or a male surgeon, whoever, they totally embraced it. So I was really grateful for that. But, I'll be honest, I was first very bitter about that. I'm like, no wonder our department is graying and aging, because you're not supporting the young doctors, blah, blah, blah. But actually, that was the universe conspiring to help me and make that decision that, I've been brewing around, that feeling I was having of like, I don't like this. Well, finally, that helped me transition out. Did you ever have any experiences with these external forces?
Totally, yeah. When, one of the ERs that I worked with, and this was during the pandemic, when I made that transition, was I just kept getting all these shifts, and specifically in the COVID unit. So during the kind of the first year of the pandemic, they had divided kind of regular ER patients, chest pain, heart attacks, non-COVID stuff, and then just purely COVID patients, anyone with an upper respiratory style of disease. And for some reason, I was getting all COVID unit shifts in the ER. And because at that time I was part time, I didn't have the disability benefits or the sick leave or anything associated. So if I were to get sick, then I would not only be not getting benefits because I was working part time, but also I would not be able to work at the clinic. And so this was kind of that external factor that said, you know what, again, externally is going to impact me significantly, both for the ketamine clinic, the personal side. And it was the decision that was right for me. I said, you know what, this is just way too much. And working full time can be really beneficial. But since I wasn't doing that and I was gradually tapering those shifts, it felt right for me. And that was the external factor. Now, one of the other things that Kim mentioned is this concept that the universe is conspiring to help you. So there's the word paranoia, which we know of. And paranoia is where the world is against me. People are watching me, they're trying to attack me, and you're paranoid. Now, there's another word called pronoia, Pronoia. And you can Google that or look it up on Wikipedia or ChatGPT later. But the concept behind pronoia is that to know that everyone and everything is helping me, to have that belief. So neither of those beliefs may or may not be true, but it's about which one do I use and leverage to help me most. And so if I adopt this concept of pronoia, i.e., the universe is going to help me. Things are going to work my way. Things that may be, quote, bad are actually beneficial. That can really shift you from being a victim to the circumstances to being a creator of the future. The best way to predict the future is to create it. And so, again, taking on kind of a new mindset can be incredibly beneficial for you as you launch your clinic or as you step away from the current position.
I think you bring a good point about mindset shifts because that's one of those things that are going to be you're going to talk about mindset shifts with your patients. They're going to get a shift in perspective on past events, current events, what they look into the future when they're getting their ketamine infusion therapy with you. And, without even having to have an infusion yourself, just noticing how that shift from everything's out to get me, is trying to screw me over, it's trying to burn me out, to, oh, wow, this door is shutting so that I can actually go through the door I want to go through, but I was too scared to go through. And so making that slight shift can be so powerful that over time, you could be grateful for that frustration. Because now I look back going, wow, if they made it so easy for me to be a new mom in that clinic, in that department, I'd still be there and I wouldn't be doing the things that I am so grateful that I get to do every single day now. And so it's just embracing that shift. And I'll be honest, sometimes the circumstances and external forces make it easier to shift and see that shift, and other times not so, which, brings us to what do you do now? You now know the 3 F's framework: finances, feelings, and forces. And so what you're going to do is get that calendar out, open your Google Calendar or whatever Todoist app or whatever you use to keep yourself organized. And you're going to schedule time to assess those 3 F's, right? So that means you diagnose your finances. That's crunch the numbers, look at your personal numbers, look at how your clinic is performing, and figure out what's that number. So you have a general idea. And then assess your feelings. That might mean taking some time to reflect. That's journaling, meditating, go on a walk. Just where are you psychologically, emotionally, mentally, spiritually about your current state of where you're working or how you're juggling both your work and your clinic, which I guess is all the work you do, right? And then finally, evaluate those forces. In other words, looking at those things around you, and instead of feeling like, it's out there to get me, what is there? What is it actually? What's the sign behind it? How can I be pronoid about it instead of paranoid about it? And see what doors are actually closing to make it obvious which one to go, or this door closes but that window opens, you could pop right out, or stick your head out and get that fresh breath of air. And also because you need to have professional advice and recommendations. Schedule that time after you've done this reflection to talk with your financial advisor or your accountant or your business attorney, because then they could also support you in making these decisions and also help you, double check those numbers you crunched too, right? To see if, oh, wow, actually you're going to need $1 million a month. This is no way doable. Actually double check your numbers, or, stay and work there until you're able to generate more income from your clinic. So some final thoughts on, should I stay or should I go full time into my ketamine clinic?
And there's really no right answer, but we believe that there is also not a wrong answer. As long as you assess your situation, have a deliberate plan, and talk with professionals. Please remember that these 3 F's we discuss can change over time, and it's not going to remain static. It's going to be dynamic. So please know that to constantly assess the situation for those 3 F's. Now, here's the truth. If owning, operating, running a ketamine clinic were easy, more people would be doing it. And please remember that this is actually a good thing because it creates a moat of protection around you and your business. It is hard, AF, but it's really a good thing because it increases the barrier to entry for those folks who may not really have the heart. They may not know their why. They may give up at the slightest bit of pressure or resistance.
Thank you so much for listening to our podcast. Today, we shared some insights and a powerful framework that we've developed since running our own clinic since 2018 and teaching others how to open their own ketamine clinic and marketing it and more since 2020. We hope this episode provided you a lot of information to help you navigate this challenging question of whether to take the full leap into ketamine infusion therapy. If you enjoyed this podcast, we'd love it if you'd subscribe to our podcast on your platform of choice. And if you haven't already, we'd so appreciate if you gave us a 5-star review, as this will help us reach more entrepreneurial medical professionals like you. Thank you again for tuning in, and we'll see you in the next episode.